Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I am your host, aspiring author Jonathan Taylor. I am standing here in a mixture of natural light and artificial light because, because it was a bit too dark to film just simply under natural light, and really when it comes to artificial light, I would just have my regular lights from within my house. Because in over a year of doing YouTube, I've somehow been too cheap to, buy a spotlight. Maybe in an alternate universe, I've been a bit more deliberate in building my platform on YouTube and actually film under a spotlight. But for now, in this universe, this is my video making setup, and in this universe, I'm continuing my How to Write month with a look into how to write alternate history. This topic, I have to say, is pretty complicated to write in and of itself, but it is simple to explain, because you really only have to consider two things: your point of divergence, or POD, though you might find it in other places under different names, and the extent of your aftermath. Regardless of what it is that you do with these two elements, however, you will have to do tons of historical research in order to get the setting right. So if you're watching any further, I am assuming that you already know that and are ready to commit to that. So with that being said, let's get into the actual video. Let's start with the POD. When it comes to your initial deviation, there are two ways you can do that. You either change some existing element of the established history you're trying to write an alternate history about, or you add something completely new to the setting. Let's start with changing something that already exists, or what I could call traditional alternate history. The thing to note here is that the history that we know about is only one of many possible outcomes that is associated with every particular historical event. And the reason why one outcome won out over others is often due to a combination of factors. Those could be environmental, those could be related to the people involved, those could be related to the legal system in place, and so on and so forth. Meaning that whatever you want to change, whatever event you want to change, you might have to look into the background of that event and change what made it possible, not just the event itself. Say you want to write an alternate history about a particular war being won by whoever originally lost it. It's not just enough to rewrite the last battle so that its losers actually win it, or maybe that's enough depending on the war. But for the most part, you have to do a bit more. You have to do a bit more legwork. You have to go through the whole war, find really the one battle that you could really call the turning point of the war, and then rework the build-up to that battle in such a way that the outcome you want to write about becomes more likely. Keep in mind that the outcome that is whatever changes with the outcome of that battle will result in changes to the front lines, will result in new battles that have to be fought, and all of those battles also have to go in such a way that your preferred outcome is more likely to happen. And in order for those battles to also go the way you want them to go, there are various environmental factors that might need to change and might need to go just right. Therefore, your initial change will either spark or be fueled by tons of various small changes that will impact not just the war, but also its aftermath. More on that later. And another thing to keep in mind is that your alternate history just like the actual history is one of only many possible alternate histories. So when you develop it, you have to consider what would be what would be the most historically plausible within your altered setting, and that might not always fit with the thematic point you're trying to make about the story. So consider that. So, however, now some of you might be asking, well, what about adding something that is completely new? Well, there is good news here. The good news is that when it comes to making your addition, you don't have to go further back than than whatever it is you're adding, because your addition is already something different. And something that could, to some extent, maybe plausibly exist. However, you still need to research, the historical setting you actually want to change, so you understand what the natural environment is, what the social environment is like, what kind of pressures upon historical events stem from these two factors, as well as who the main historical figures are as people who led the certain historical events to go the way they did. Because if you manage to do your work right, you'll have a good understanding of how these people and these factors interact and converge and work, and are therefore able to predict how they would react under specific conditions, like the one your addition would bring up. Keep in mind, however, that just like with traditional alternate history, your addition could lead to a whole slew of previously unpredictable events. And here is where we come into talking about the aftermath. Luckily, you've already done all the research related to how your initial change would impact the setting. So you already know a lot about what you need to know about how the natural environment is like, about what the social environment is like, about what the most important historical figures are like, and therefore can predict to some extent how these factors would influence each other over some period of time. There is, however, one rule of thumb here, namely, or rather three. The first one is that the further in the future you go, the harder it is to actually make accurate predictions. The second one is that details are in general harder to predict than broad strokes. And the third thing to consider is that over time these details can add up and lead to divergences that can have increasingly erratic consequences that make whatever alternate history you're writing about increasingly hard to predict. You might have seen at least one of those prophecies about insert current year from insert some year in the past here videos, and you might have noticed that some of them did make some accurate prophecies and some of them didn't. Yeah, that's kind of what will happen even in your alternate scenario. Unless you have some kind of entity or force guiding the events towards one specific outcome, after about anything that happens after about 60 years after the initial alteration is almost pure speculation, and anything that happens 1,000 years or more after your initial divergence is, for all intents and purposes, impossible to define. You could still try it if you think that'll be fun or interesting. However, keep in mind that you might be the only one who finds it fun or interesting, or you might be horribly wrong. Cough, Bright, cough, Blood Rose Battalion, cough, cough. And yeah, that was my video. Thank you very much for your attention. I have to say, when I initially thought about the topics for my How to Write month, I I turned to my Twitter followers, linked to my Twitter in the description, in order to have them help me figure out the release order for these various topics. And while including this one, I've already done all of the topics on that poll, there is still one particular video topic that I think I could, I could still hammer out a video about. So, join me next time when I close out How to Write month with a look at games and sports. For now, however, I would once again like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and maybe share it wherever you think people will like it or find it useful. If you have anything you would like to add, the comment section awaits your input. And if you want to see when my next video comes out, for whatever reason you would want to do that, then I suggest you go ahead and subscribe. Ideally, also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. Until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.